everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live here at Jonny Lipsham Studios in Gorebridge in Scotland, capital of the universe, capital of the world, and all of that fun stuff. Hope everybody has had a good week. Been a busy one here, been a busy weekend here as well. I've had relatives round, and I've got more relatives coming tomorrow. So whilst I'm working, which is going to be an interesting one, but my wife has been off work so for the last week, because schools are going to be going back on Wednesday, so my kids are going to be gearing up to going to brand new schools. So my wife took these couple of weeks off basically to help them get them ready for transitioning to their new schools. So it's going to be a pretty stressful week coming up. But yeah, exciting at the same time. So yeah, that's kind of the story here. Hope everyone is all right. And it looks like you guys have been kind of having your own kind of Jonny Lipsham Studios Sunday Night Live Olympics. That's what it looks like here. Because John Lake was the first one in. And Billy Morgan was second, followed by Marcos. And Marcos basically gave John a gold medal and Billy the silver and himself the bronze. Congratulations, guys, for being the first 3 people in the door. Well done. And we have Louis of Alps Media here as well. And James Jonny is here as well. Awesome. Kevin from Kevin's Guitar Stories is here. And we have all the usual suspects, including Kyle Jadruziak, Thomas Melkerson over in the Philippines. Mike Neighbor from Peace Valley Audio, one of my faithful moderators, is here. And let's see, who else do we have? And Sacred Squirrel, I think that is. Secret Squirrel? Yeah. He says that he posted the link to this show to his 3 Twitter followers. That's awesome. Hopefully one of those 3 will attend, if not all 3 of them. That would be cool. So thanks for doing that. And Roy Nicolason is here as well. And Tony Carlini. And who else do we have? That looks like that rounds up the people who are here tonight. If you are watching the show and you have not been to my Sunday Night Live show before, and this is your first time, then please do say hello in the chat, and I will read out your comments with your name as well. Speaking of people just walking in the door, Old School Funk and Soul is here as well, which is awesome. We're just waiting for Bobby Booth. Hopefully he will be here because we can't really start the show until he's here. So that's really who we're waiting for. And Don Oliver is here. Don, I think you were here maybe last week, or this might be your first week. I'm not really sure. I think I've seen your name before, but I'm glad you're here. Welcome, everybody. We've got 14 or 15 people here, which is pretty cool, considering I only advertised this about 38 seconds before the show because I suddenly realized I had not done that. I had meant to do that this afternoon and kind of, you know, what it is when you have people round, you kind of get sidetracked, and I was. What's that? Am I a hard father about school notes? Always and only 10. I'm not quite sure what that means, to be honest, Marcos, but okay. Yeah, my daughter Anna is 11, and she is starting high school, and my son Sam is 9, and he is in what we would call here in Scotland, he's going to be in primary 5. So that's exciting for him, and he's probably pretty nervous as well because it's a brand new school and he's going to have to make some new friends as well. And my daughter Anna, she's going to be going to a school that she is already familiar with, thankfully, because she is a member of the National Youth Choir of Scotland, and one of the regional gatherings of that choir meets at her new school. So she's familiar with that school surrounding and some of the people there. So she's going to be okay, I think. So she's looking forward to starting high school. So we've got school uniforms and all of that kind of thing sorted out this week. Mika is here as well. Hello, Mika. Glad you're here too. Sacred Squirrel says, is there any chance you would demo DAW MIDI articulation for VST guitars? I can't find anything on guitar articulation on YouTube. Fairly new to and desperately need a demo. I don't have a MIDI guitar, which is not really going to help you, I'm afraid. Unfortunately. But if you're asking about kind of, if you're using a virtual instrument and kind of doing things like pitch bends and things like that, with a good guitar instrument, you will, a guitar virtual instrument, you'll find that quite a lot of guitar virtual instruments have things called key switches or sound variations, which means in the lower part of your MIDI keyboard, this lower octave maybe, which is outside of the register of the guitar instrument that you're using, there will be a section here devoted to selecting a particular sound variation. So maybe things like pinched harmonics, or muted notes, or some other particular articulation. You can select these down here, and you can sometimes, depending upon the instrument, you can play those in real time. So you can pick out your key switch, your sound variation, whilst actually playing with your other hand up here. And then of course you've got access to your modulation wheel for vibrato and pitch bend as well. And really the secret is to playing any virtual instrument, be that a trumpet or a saxophone or a trombone kind of sound. The secret is to try and think like a trombonist, try and think like a trumpet player, try and think like a saxophone player. The thing to remember is when you're playing a simulated woodwind or brass instrument is you have to remember that the performer has to breathe. So you need to kind of breathe as you're playing the virtual instrument so that when you kind of run out of breath, that's when you stop a phrase. And then you breathe, and then you breathe out as you play the next part. And that will help you get kind of like the kind of shaping of phrasing and that kind of thing for those kind of instruments pretty good, pretty effectively. And then it is just a case of selecting the right sound variations or key switches depending upon what they're called by that particular virtual instrument. But as I say, I don't actually have a MIDI guitar by which I can actually play that for you, demonstrate that for you with an actual guitar. But I guess we can maybe do that with with just some playing on with a virtual instrument. Hang on just a minute. I can open up a new song and we can see if I can find something that does actually have something like that. Let's see. Let's go for let's maybe bring in presence and see what we have in presence. Yes, please. I mean, there's a VST. I'm trying to figure out this art conductor from Babylon Waves. I'm trying to figure out articulations of that. Yeah, I don't have that, unfortunately. So what I'm going to show is going to be pretty generic rather than specific to that particular instrument because, as I say, I don't have that instrument. But let's see. So we are looking at Presence XT right here, and there are some guitar sounds in here that can be useful. For example, if I go and get something like the Telecaster, I mean, there's some built-in ones here. If I go Telecaster full, see this section down here in red, this gives me access to some particular key switches. So this one here, that's kind of like legato, and then you've got mutes. So if I was to press legato just now, and oh, I need to record on the track first. Why is it not making any sound? Oh, I know why. I don't have the keyboard switched on. Hang on. It's a rather ancient controller keyboard that I have. This guy here I've had since 1994. Or was it 93? I think it was 1993 when I got this, and it was one of the first of its kind in the UK. Yamaha sent it to me to do a review for a magazine. Back in the day when I was trying to be kind of like a music journalist kind of thing. To make some extra money. So anyway. Let's see. So that's kind of on a kind of legato sound right now. Let's see, what do we have here? So this is kind of more mute. So, you know, those kind of things can be handy. And then what do we have here? We've got some deads as well, which, you know, they don't really do a whole lot other than the kind of dead sounds. And then we got some harmonics. So those can be quite pleasant to listen to. And then we've got some slides. So you can do fun things like that with those kind of things. This is actually relatively limited, what you have available here. And then there's kind of like various different effects things you can do. So you got like all sorts of different sound effects that you might want to do as well. But this slides one I really like. So that could be useful for kind of coming up with some kind of guitar part. But yeah, and there's no strum effect in this particularly. But you might find that there are some other guitar VSTIs that, you know, they have things like strums. And you'll find, I think there's a Native Instruments one. I think there's a funk guitar Native Instruments one that has some nice little strumming patterns. And then you just need to input the chords for that. And you'll have yourself a pretty darn good guitar. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Mika says, R.I.P. Nancy Griffith. Yes, I was reading about that because I have lots of good friends in the music industry. Some of them more famous than others. And one of those that is a little bit more famous is the bass player and vocalist Will Lee. I met him at Bass Day 1993 in London, along with Victor Wooten. And I know that Will had done a lot of work with Nancy. And so when he posted on his Instagram that she had passed away, I was sad to hear that news. So yeah, it is pretty sad. She was a wonderful vocalist and entertainer. So yeah, it's pretty sad that she's died. And I know that Will was pretty cut up about it. So, continuing on, however, Marcos says a 100% digital mix. So send to an analog mixer or some analog thing, process and merge that process with the original digital mix for an analog taste. Good idea. I wouldn't do it that way. If I'm gonna do a mix, then I'm either gonna do it fully in the box, or I'm going to do it using analog gear, and then bring it back into the box. If I had something like what my friend Dave Vignola now has, which is an SSL console, then I would work in that kind of hybrid fashion that he does, where he brings the audio out from Studio One into his console. He mixes through the console, so through the EQs and the compressors and the bus compressor of the SSL, and then he brings that back into what he calls a print track inside of Studio One, and then that is what gets exported as the final mixdown. I wouldn't kind of do two separate mixes and then try and somehow blend them together. That wouldn't really work, and you'd probably encounter a whole bunch of phasing issues as well, especially if you do them as two separate mixes, which you then kind of blend together. You're probably going to get some kind of phasing problems, which you wouldn't really want. So if you're going to mix on an analog mixer with analog gear, go for it. You'll have to set up the I/O to be able to do that, so that the audio comes out of Studio One into your mixer, through the mixer, through all your external gear, through patch bays and that kind of thing, and then through your outputs back into Studio One. And that would be the way in which you could mix. However, you could also do a combination of plugins inside of Studio One and through the console as well. Totally legitimate to work in that kind of hybrid fashion. My good friend Dave does it. Another good friend of mine called Wiesner, he does it. He does not work in Studio One, but I think he works in Sonar, I think it was that he works in. So he has a smaller SSL mixer. But he has a whole bunch of outboard compressors and EQs as well, and he mixes through those and then back into his DAW, and then combines that with, doing some processing inside the DAW before he hits the console. You can certainly work that way. Both are pretty valid and can certainly be done. What's what I'm trying to learn is strumming pre-programmed keys. Actually, if there is no strumming thing built into the VST, then you're going to have a hard time trying to actually play strumming on keys. You'll have a hard time trying to emulate that, replicate that. You can kind of simulate it a little bit by using one of the note effects. One of the note effects plugins. If I go and get that, open up, and I can show you kind of what you can do. Where are my note effects? Let me close that up. Where are the note effects? I haven't used the note effects in so long. Let's see. Here we go. Note effects. Yes, you could use the arpeggiator. Cool thing about the arpeggiator, if I drop this onto this track here, the cool thing about the arpeggiator is it has this little guy here, which will enable you to play kind of like a chord thing. So, you can kind of set it up so that Now, with that particular... Let's put that back over here. There we go. So that's kind of doing your mute guitar kind of thing, and then if you put it on this one over here. So you can kind of simulate it a little bit with something like that. But ultimately, unless the guitar VST actually has like some kind of strumming feature built into it, you're going to struggle, to be really honest. But there we go. You may have to poke Jail a few more times. Yeah, if you make sure that you type at Jonny Lipsham Studios at the start of your question, I will definitely pick it out. So... but yeah, otherwise it's quite hard to pick it out from amongst the chat. I will be honest about that. So I hope that helps you anyway, Secret Squirrel. But I'm glad you asked the question, and I'm glad you're here. So please don't, be afraid to contribute and ask more questions. It's not a bother. Anything I can do to, to help kind of resolve your issue. In this particular case, it sounds to me like you're using a particular guitar VST instrument that I don't have and I'm not aware of. So if it does actually have some kind of built-in strumming feature, then you should be golden. You should be well away. And then it's just a case of learning how that works, and then learning how, if you're not a guitar player, then learning how to think like one when you're selecting kind of like the strumming patterns and how to kind of trigger those off of the keyboard. Otherwise, if you're not really, if you are, on the other hand, if you are a guitar player, then you've got a distinct advantage over me. I'm not really a guitar player. I do have a guitar. It is over there in the corner. I have an Ibanez hollow body jazz guitar, which I play occasionally. I'm not very good. I would not consider myself a guitarist, and I would never play on anybody's records except my own when I want to, have a little bit of guitar in the particular tune I'm working on. So, yeah, I hope that helps you. Martin Weeks is here. He says, just popping in for a bit. Needed a break from mixing and fixing website. Okay, well, I'm glad you're here, Martin. Welcome. Who else has walked in the door? See, Ronald Figura is here. He says, howdy. And I'm very glad you're here too, Ronald. Welcome. And Secret Squirrel says, thank you very kindly. You're welcome. You're very welcome. And, week by week, feel free to just come and ask your questions. That's what this show exists for. This show exists for answering questions to do with songwriting, composing, arranging, music theory, Studio One, mixing, recording. We cover it all, to be honest, on this show. This is kind of what I call my broad spec show. And, if I can answer your question, I'll answer it. If I can't, then I'll point you hopefully in the direction of where you can find a good answer. But I don't have all the answers, I'm afraid. But I do try my best to get you the best possible answer that I can. All right, so let's see. We don't have any more questions. But we've got 18 people in here. We dropped a little bit from our peak of 22. I know that we have had a high set, I think 2 weeks ago, or is it 3 weeks ago, one or the other, where we hit 34, which was awesome. I would love to be up at that point a bit more regularly, maybe go past that and on towards 50, would be very cool. Because I know that Johnny Guy gets around about 50 or so on his shows. And I know that Dave Vignola gets 50 or 60 as well. So I would like to be up in that bracket as well, ultimately. That's kind of where I'm hopefully heading for. That's what I'd like. Let's see. Marcus says, thanks for your patience about everything, for the marvelous lives you did about Zoom, and for the support about questions. Well, I'm very glad that they help. Thank you. Ronald says, out and about and heard Sorcerer's Apprentice. What a masterful work. It really is. The Sorcerer's Apprentice is glorious composition. It is masterful, not only in how the melodies are composed, but the way that they are orchestrated. So you have beautiful melodies with beautiful counter melodies, and then everything is just wonderfully contrasted between the different sections of the orchestra. It's a thing of beauty, and it really does conjure up that image of a sorcerer's apprentice with all sorts of kind of musical special effects, I guess you'd call them. So it's very, very cool. One of my faves. Sorry, I've got a slightly itchy nose. Gal says, can we get some likes here, people? Yes, please. If you have not, hit that like button. Smash it now. We have 22 people watching right now, but we only have 10 likes. So if you like these kind of shows, and if you like how I answer your questions and how much I help you, or have helped you in the past, and you're here because I have helped you in the past, then hit the like button. 2 more of you just did, which is awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And also, you will see in the description down below that there is a link to my PayPal account. If the inclination strikes you and you have the urge to be generous, then please do go and be generous there. It would be greatly appreciated. But there is, like I say, no compulsion. Nobody is under any compulsion to do anything, really, other than just ask me questions. That's it. That's all I compel you to do when you are watching my show, is ask your questions. But otherwise, yeah. That would be nice if you could. Let's see. Yeah, Ronald says lots of thematic variations. Yes, definitely. That's one of the things that is particularly special about that work. Another favorite work of mine that features those kind of things would be the works of Gustav Holst. I think he was an Austrian who emigrated to the United Kingdom, to here, and lived in the UK for most of his life. But Holst was a wonderful composer, and he had a real gift of voicing chords across the orchestra, and he had a real gift for melody. And when you put those two kind of things together, his harmonically broad and adventurous palette, alongside his real gift for melody, and his ability to create music that conjures imagery and characters in your mind. Particularly if you go check out his 9-movement suite called The Planets. If you've never heard of it before, go check it out, because there are 9 movements, one for each of the planets of the then solar system, because back then it was believed that there were 9. There are now kind of 8 because Pluto got downgraded, unfortunately. So yes, it features all of the planets and each planet has its own personality and its own character. And Holst does a great job at bringing out each of the aspects of each of the characters. So you kind of start with Mars, the bringer of war. So you have lots of warlike, aggressive, loud. It's almost like heavy metal for orchestra. And then you finish up with Neptune, which is so tranquil and peaceful, and you know, the music barely moves. It's kind of kaleidoscopic. It's kind of just shifting tone colors with a couple of fragments of melody that get passed around slowly through the orchestra. And then we finish up with the choir, a wordless choir taking up the melodic and thematic ideas. And then it finishes with this looped 2-bar cadence, which gets gradually quieter and quieter, because what they did was that the composer's instruction is that the choir should be in a separate chamber, a separate room, and then the door to that room is slowly closed whilst the choir is looping this 2-bar cadence. And so you get this incredible kind of gradual diminuendo of the choir. And then, but whilst that's happening, the orchestra gradually gets thinner and thinner and thinner until you're just left with, I think, 2 harps and an alto flute. And these 2 harps are playing this same discord over and over again, and you have this descending figure in the alto flute until eventually all of that's gone and you're just left with the wordless choir. And it's just beautiful. And then eventually there's nothing because the choir fades out to nothing. It's fantastic. So if you have never checked out Holst the Planets, I highly recommend you do so. And then when you have listened through Holst the Planets, I then recommend you go and listen to John Williams' scores for the Indiana Jones films and Star Wars, particularly the original Star Wars films, and see if you can pick out kind of similar concepts, similar ideas, and do maybe a little bit of comparison between Holst the Planets, the music of John Williams, and kind of see if you can see just how much of an influence Holst, particularly orchestrationally, had on John Williams's film music. So there you go. Love it. Love that kind of stuff. Marcus says, friendship is when friends ship great things without interest, and I believe you're on this line of life. Well, that's very kind. Thank you. And it's a very nice little thing to say. Appreciate it a lot. Tchaikovsky, The Tempest is one of my favorites of all time. Ken, I wholeheartedly agree. I love the music of Tchaikovsky. I really do. I love his... I love the way he brings some kind of... some Russian folk melodies into his music. And there's lots of beautiful interplay between brass and woodwinds. And I love the way he orchestrates. It's awesome, and I love the piano works as well. So definitely check those out. Kyle says £5 via PayPal. Thank you very much, Kyle. You rock. Appreciate it. That's very kind. Thank you. Right, let's see. Marcos asks, can I send you to your inbox a song I recorded with 1 minute of 12 length? I wish your opinion was recorded without intention to be famous, just for fun. Yes, by all means, do send it to me, and I will take a listen when I get a chance to, for sure. And then I'll send you a couple of sentences worth of notes. John Lake says his Holst back in town. Gustav Holst, one of my compositional heroes, in actual fact. He wrote some other works as well, but The Planets is probably the most famous of all of his works. Because the guy had prodigious talent, for sure. He wrote some, I think he wrote an opera, and he certainly wrote some pieces for orchestra and choir. That much I do know, because I've been in choirs where I've sung them. All right, so we got about 25 minutes or so left of the show. Mike is back in the house. He says, my mom called me. You know what? Family is the most important thing. You got to do family. Family's cool, man. And the Planets is amazing. Yes, it most certainly is. There's lots of beautiful moments in the whole thing. Lots of fantastic ideas, and kind of stretching and playing with the boundaries of what's considered conventional harmony at the turn of the century. He really stretched things and started getting into bitonal stuff. If you don't know what bitonal basically means, it's essentially playing in it's essentially playing in two different keys at the same time. So you might have your lower kind of brass playing a G major chord, and then on top of that you might have brass and upper brass and woodwinds playing a B major chord on top of that. So you would get this kind of a sound. And so that kind of thing started becoming popular earlier, probably in the late Romantic period, and was being picked up by people like Holst and developed. And there's a lot of composers that took that a whole bunch further. People like Webern and Schoenberg in particular kind of developed a whole nother system based out of that, which is well worth checking out. However, I have to say the music of Berg and Webern and Schoenberg, if you're not kind of clued into what's going on, it's hard to listen to. It really is hard to listen to. So it does take a little while to kind of figure out and understand what's going on and why it is the way it is. But once you get used to it and you listen to it more, your ears become accustomed to it and you start to understand what's going on, it is just like learning another language, and it's well worth getting into. My wife doesn't like it at all, but I'm quite happy to play Miles Davis, and then half an hour later I'll play something by Schoenberg. And to me, I don't see any cognitive dissonance at all, but my wife's just like, okay, how can you listen to Miles Davis and then listen to that? And she's like, well, because there are similar things going on. Certainly, Miles Davis around that 1960-61 period where he was starting to explore bringing the music of Jimi Hendrix and rock music into jazz, and beginning to develop what became fusion, and all of that, and the Bitches Brew record, and all of that, and the Live at the Phil Maurice concert, which I have, which was 1969, 1970. Bitches Brew, I think, was 1969. But that first show, Miles Davis was opening for Neil Young and Crazy Horse. And so, there's an audience there that are very much a rock-raised audience. And, they're kind of not really entirely clued in as to what Miles was doing, but Miles was pioneering fusion, a unique fusion and alloy between jazz and rock music. And eventually people started to get it, and they dug it. But yeah, I'm kind of saying all of that to say that, there are parallels between the things that Berlioz and Bartók and Webern and Berg and Schoenberg were doing that Miles Davis was beginning to kind of apply as well. So check those things out. Roy Nicolason says, I bought an external hard drive thanks to your tip when you talked about how to avoid crashes and stuff like that. Looking forward to seeing if it helps to write to a different disk. It will help, but the key thing is to make sure that the hard drive that you're writing to is fast enough. So really, you need to be looking for a hard drive that is, if it's not a solid state drive and it's a mechanical spinning drive, then you need to make sure that it's a 7200 RPM drive. 5400 is not fast enough for real-time audio writing to disk. Just not fast enough, and that's kind of where you'll start to see, the CPU meter peg a bit, and you'll get dropouts, and you'll get pops, and you'll get clicks, And you may even get some songs that just crash, where Studio One goes, oh, I don't know. Which is what a crash is, by the way. Just so that you know. And I've got that straight from the horse's mouth. You know, when Studio One crashes, it's Studio One going, oh, I don't know. That's it. But yeah, make sure that it's a 7200 RPM drive that you are now saving your song files to. And having the application Studio One itself and your plugins and your virtual instruments on your system drive, you know, then your songs are being written to the other drive, not on the same drive as your system drive, because your system drive needs to be able to totally dedicate itself to running the operating system and making sure your computer is running nice and smoothly and healthily and everything else, but also making sure the applications remain stable. And then the application Studio One can then concentrate on writing to your other drive, and you don't end up with a bottleneck of data going that way and, you know, data going that way onto the same drive. You know, that's where you start getting binging and banging, and that's where data can drop. That's where audio files can, you know, the waveform is still present in the song, but you don't hear it anymore. Stuff like that can be caused by those kind of things. So yeah, that's one of the important things with an external hard drive. Marcos says the newer places geological problems like earthquakes or tsunamis, or it's fine. This is Scotland, dude. We don't, well, I was going to say we don't have earthquakes here, but we do, because Scotland features two particular fault lines. Not that this is a geology show, because it isn't. But yeah, Scotland features two particular fault lines, and as a result, there are various volcanic systems that have existed in Scotland in the past. So you do still get some seismic activity. You don't get volcanic activity anymore, but you do get some seismic activity. However, I think the strongest earthquake that's ever been measured in Scotland is a 3.1. And I was not here at the time when it happened. I was away on tour. But just about 2 weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we had a 2.3. And that's about it. I mean, we certainly felt it. I certainly felt it. And the windows did shake a wee bit. And a few things did shake a wee bit. But, you know, that was kind of the extent of it. But yeah, we don't tend to get earthquakes. And as for tornadoes, yes, the UK does have tornadoes. But they're nothing like the tornadoes you get in the Midwest, in, you know, Tornado Alley and that kind of area. You know, where you get like 2 mile wide EF5 tornadoes. We don't get those here. We're lucky if we get an EF1 here. But occasionally something like an EF1 or an EF2 does touch down and does cause some damage. But they are, to us, those are rare. Those are massive tornadoes, and they're rare. Usually we get little micro tornadoes. But we get about 40 or 50 tornadoes per year. And like I say, they're kind of EF1 if you're lucky. But there we go. See, I do know a little bit about those kind of things, but only a little bit. Martin Wheat says, I grew up listening to Fusion, love it, always wondered why it took so long. Listen to Miles Stanley Clark's Return Forever, Jeff Beck, Blow by Blow, Weather Report, and Danny Gatton. Yeah, I grew up listening to all that stuff as well, mate. But before I got into things like Weather Report and you know, Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, and all of that, before I got into that, I listened to Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. I listened to Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, John Coltrane. That's kind of what I grew up with, and Steely Dan. I mean, Steely Dan would be considered a fusion band without really being a fusion band. They're not a fusion band in the sense of Return to Forever or Dreams, you know, where you had Mike and Randy Brecker with Chris Rogers in the horn section, and you had an all-star rhythm section. But yeah, Steely Dan weren't a fusion band like that, but they were certainly a unique fusion band in that they took, jazz harmony and various other aspects of jazz and fused it with pop and straight rock and roll, straight up, rhythm and blues. And they created this unique fusion that I don't think anybody was doing at the time. So yeah, I grew up listening to all of that stuff. Let's see. Peter Brooks says, in the MIDI note editor, is there a trim tool? I don't know that there is, but we can look. In the MIDI editor, well, first of all, we've got to get some MIDI notes to edit. So MIDI editor, here we are in the MIDI editor here. Is there a trim tool? I don't see one. There's the split tool. So let's say if I go to this pencil tool and I draw in that kind of length of note, you can split it. But let's say I decide, I don't want this to be 2 beats long. Well, I can just click at the end of it and I can drag it back. And I can do the same with that note. And that's basically how I go about changing the lengths of a note. If I decide that the articulation between these two notes isn't quite right, then, this is kind of what I do. So, if I was to just play this here. Oh yeah, I need to get rid of the note effects, don't I? Let's remove that. And let's change our sound variation so that we are playing just legato. There we go. So, if I had played this, maybe like that, and I decided, you know what? I don't like that. I want this to be short, and I want this to be just before the beat. Then, that's kind of how I trim things. So I hope that helps answer that question. Martin saw Herbie Hancock at Kenny Center 3 years I worked there. After about 4 songs, he turned off his electric keyboard and said enough of this noise for a while, and then played for over 45 minutes just acoustic piano jazz. Yeah, I mean, Herbie Hancock is a lover of technology. I know that for a fact, because he is he does a lot of his work in Notion, which Presonus makes, and Studio One, which we also make. So yeah, so he is a Presonus guy. I know that much about Herbie. So yeah, he is a lover of technology, that's for sure. So let's see. Don't know the answer to that question, Martin. Roy says the speed on the hard drive is 450 megabytes per second. It's a Samsung SSD. Well, there you go. If it's an SSD, then you're probably in business, to be honest. But yeah, what I kind of said about mechanical hard drives still stands. If you're writing to a mechanical hard drive, make sure it's a 7200 RPM spinning hard drive. If it's an SSD, solid state drive, you don't have to worry about that because solid state drives are way, way faster. There's no moving parts. So there are less likely to be any of those kind of issues. Although that's not to say that an SSD can't die or an SSD can't develop bad blocks, because it can. Seen it happen. But it's incredibly rare for that to happen. Ken says if you zoom in enough on the MIDI note, the tool changes depending upon the top. Yes, that's also true. That is also very true, Ken. And that's an excellent observation. The guitarist who did most of Asia with them, can't remember the name. There were different guitarists actually on Asia. I think Larry Carlton was on that record. Jay Graydon, I think, was on there playing some rhythm guitar. Dean Parks was on there as well, playing some rhythm guitar on various different tracks. And but yes, some of the solo guitars, like the guitar solo on Peg was done by Jay Graydon, who is a tremendous session guitar player. And he basically came in and nailed it in one take. Walter and Donald had spent, I think, 3 or 4 months, 5 days a week for 3 or 4 months, just trying out different guitarists to try and get a good guitar solo. Quite why they didn't get Walter to do it, I don't know. But they didn't. Walter did not do that guitar solo. And, everybody struggled with it for whatever reason. And then Jay Graydon came and did it and nailed it in one take and had absolutely no problem with the chord changes whatsoever. So, yeah. Sacred Squirrel says, for the relatively new to composition arrangement in 2021, which software writing aids, composition mixing tools do you feel get too little coverage for amazing orchestral? That's a great question. Which ones get too little coverage? I don't know that I can answer that, because there are some really, really good tools and some really good software. And, I am obviously a biased person because of the company that I work for. But, I'm going to say Notion for composing, for doing notation. So if you're writing for a brass band, a wind band, a big band, an orchestra, or any other kind of ensemble where you are going to need to give musicians charts, or if you're writing for a choir, you're going to need to give them SATB plus piano accompaniment. You can do all of that in Notion. I use Notion. I used Notion before I even became a Presonus employee. But Notion is fantastic for all of that stuff. And the sound library is awesome, because the sound library was recorded, all the samples for Notion were recorded by the London Symphony Orchestra at Abbey Road Studios. And so you get brilliantly high fidelity samples of great musicians. And effectively you get the London Symphony Orchestra performing your work at Abbey Road Studios. That's effectively what you get with Notion. So it is well worth getting, and it is well worth getting into if you understand notation and know how that works. And from a software point of view, it's actually pretty easy to get into. So I would recommend that for composing. But if you're strictly a singer-songwriter, then Studio One does all of that for you. Plus, you also get some aspects of Notion embedded into it with the new score editor, which can be handy if you're wanting to print out a lead sheet, or if you're wanting to print out a chord chart for a guitar player for the song that you're recording in Studio One. You can do that in the score editor, and then you can just print it out and hand it to your session musician who can play beautifully on your recording. So you can certainly do that inside of Studio One, and then Studio One is just perfect for mixing and mastering because you have a fully integrated mastering suite. So you can literally go from bare bones basic ideas, scratch tracks, all the way through to mastering. And the great thing is, it doesn't just stop there. You can go and you can set up a live show using your mastered songs. It's perfect for that kind of thing. Ken says, I know Larry Carlton from playing with Dave Grusin. Was very surprised to learn he did work with Steely Dan as well. Dave Grusin is one of my piano heroes, Ken. Tim Talks Audio is here, everybody. Tim gets his obligatory F major 7, 13 kind of, yeah, F major 7, 9, 13 kind of chord. Because that's the kind of guy he is. That's Tim to me. He's an F major 7, 9, 13 kind of guy. But yeah, Tim, glad to have you here. Tim is one of my awesome moderators as well. But yeah, Ken, Dave Grusin is one of my piano heroes. I love the way he plays. He made a record years and years ago with John Patitucci and Dave Weckl and a few others, which is called the Gershwin Collection. And basically it was his arrangements of a bunch of George and Ira Gershwin songs. And the arrangements are just a thing of beauty. And his playing is just glorious. And I don't even think that record is in print anymore. So you might not even be able to get it. I still have it on a CD somewhere. It's probably in a box in the garage still. We haven't completely unpacked here yet. But yeah, I didn't know that you knew Larry. Wow. That's awesome. Let's see. Music to Motion is here. He's saying hello to Tim. And everybody should say hello to Tim. Because Tim is awesome. He rocks. And you should check out his channel, by the way, guys. If you have not checked out Tim's channel, go and subscribe as soon as this show is finished, which it will be in 2 minutes' time. Go to Tim Talks Audio YouTube channel, subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, and go and check out his content because he has some fantastic videos and he does his own live show, which is awesome. I have gate crashed his show a few times, so go check it out. You'll not regret it. He has a fantastic way of teaching, and he has a really cool perspective on recording and mixing that you should check out. So there we go. I think we're at the end of the show, and that rhymed. Ken says, I have that on one and the Duke Ellington. Oh, that Duke. I don't have the Duke Ellington one on CD, unfortunately. I wish I did. Because I love the music of Duke Ellington. I tell you what I did see. I did see the WDR big band who are based in Cologne in Germany. I saw them do a Duke Ellington live show where they did Vince Mendoza's arrangements of classic Ellington works, which was awesome. So there we go. We have reached the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. Going exceptionally Scottish there. I try to kind of suppress it just a wee bit because I want to make sure that everybody can understand me. But there you go. So we've reached the end of the show, folks. Thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. Your questions, as usual, were fantastic. Please do keep them coming. And if you have an idea for a particular topic that you would like us to cover, and spend a good chunk of a show, devote a particular show to, then please do email me at johnny@johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Website is down there. You can see it down there. So yeah, hit that. There's a contact us button or contact me button. I can't remember what I called it. Go check that out. By the way, the website that is there, my website, I've had it extended by a little bit. Kajabi, who I have had my website hosted with for a while, gave me a wee extension. They gave me like a couple of months of extra time for free with them, which is awesome of Kajabi. Thank you, Kajabi. But yes, that website is still going away. I know I've talked about it before, and I'm going to finish tonight's show with that. that the current website with Kajabi is going to be going away. So if you have purchased one of those courses, please download all the content onto your computer so you have it all forever and you don't lose it when I close this particular version of the website. I am working on a new website. I have some fantastic help with that, and all will be revealed because in the future, in the very foreseeable future, because I have some exciting things going on, some exciting new developments, which I'm not going to talk to you about yet. I'm not going to reveal anything yet, but rest assured, we will be launching the brand new website very soon with a significant and exciting announcement to go with it. So hang around, stay around. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. It's over there somewhere. And hit the notification bell next to it and click all notifications. And until next time, folks, bye-bye. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. There we go.